right. Fantastic. I think I'm going to get us started whilst we wait for the final few people to file through. Pleasure to welcome everybody to this session on overcoming barriers to digital health adoption in Europe. My name's Richard Secker-Johnson. I lead the digital and connected health practice for ZS in Europe. As a team, we work across the spectrum to support our clients in the scaling of digital technology and digital medicine. That involves work from strategy through to hands-on design and development of both SAMD and non-SAMD products, and all the way through to execution in the connected ecosystem. And so it's my pleasure to facilitate this topic today. So I think we've heard yesterday that scaling can mean many different things to many different people. It spans from having a fundamentally valuable product through to generating the correct evidence to impress payers, to impress physicians, to impress patients, through to achieving some level of access and reimbursement, and then finally pulling all of that through to in-market adoption. And it's that final topic that we want to focus on today. What are some of the practical activities, some of the practical steps that are required to generate that adoption from both a HCP and from a patient perspective? And before we get into things, I think we should acknowledge up front that there is no single playbook to follow. Different products are going to require different strategies in different markets. We're still figuring things out, and there are only a few examples of solutions that have obtained scale, and few and far between in certain solution classes. But I think what we will be aiming to achieve today is to showcase some leading examples, to synthesize some lessons learned based on past experiences, and also to share some perspectives as we look to the future about what success looks like, and then hopefully you can, as an audience, join those puzzle pieces together as you think about what successful adoption is going to require for your particular solution and your particular product in its market. So to provide some structure for today's session, we're going to be focusing in on these 4 barriers to adoption. Last year, we commissioned a piece of physician research in Europe to survey the different drivers and barriers to adoption across a number of key markets. And it was these 4 barriers that consistently stood out as the most frequent and also the most core to driving physician adoption. So the first 2 that we'll be discussing together relate to physician awareness and engagement. And I think it's safe to say that even if the physician isn't a strict gatekeeper to your product, as may be the case for a prescription digital therapeutic, we've heard a lot over the course of the last sessions about the human interaction and the role that that's going to play in delivering care. And so I think for many, if not the majority, of digital health solutions, both provider and patient facing, the HCP is going to play a role in the uptake, adherence to, and retention on your solution in the longer term. So the first issue we have here relates to fundamental digital health literacy. As many as 70% of the respondents in our own survey cited this as a barrier to adoption. And so I think it's very important that we speak about this today. It's something that we've seen corroborated in the literature as well, with some less mature European markets having 30 to 40% of HCPs still citing that they haven't even heard fundamentals about digital health. Right? Assuming that we can raise that bar in terms of fundamental digital health literacy, you then still need to ensure that HCPs are engaged upon your particular solution and its value prop. And that message of value for your solution, maybe dispelling some of the myths and preconceptions that they might otherwise be holding about digital health, has to be delivered across a variety of channels to a variety of decision makers and influencers within the healthcare ecosystem, and those messages need to hit and need to land against the backdrop of all of the other touch points and messages that are going to be getting delivered via digital health and life sciences companies alike. Once you have the physicians and the health professionals on board, then arguably even more important is patient empowerment. And We've spoken yesterday about the importance of fundamentally good design in your product. There needs to be good fit between a product and an unmet patient need, and then delivering a consumer-grade user experience is the hygiene factor for ensuring that there's usability and accessibility for your product. But beyond the product itself, additional steps often still need to be taken to ensure that patients are appropriately empowered and able to get your solution, and then still appropriately supported once they're using your solution to derive full benefits and ultimately maximize their outcomes on your particular product, on your particular solution. Finally, if we get all of that right, then there's still the challenge of last mile deployment, the technical complexity of the European health IT landscape. And as long as that remains fragmented and complex to navigate, this is also going to come up as a frequent barrier. In literature, we often see there being two sides to this coin. The first being technical deployment. That might include something like integration into EHR, EMR, through to the management of the workflows associated with the technical implementation of your solution. So 4 big buckets that I want to get into today with the help of our speakers. And so I'd like to invite on stage Sam and Marlin and allow you to briefly introduce yourselves, maybe a little bit about your role, your background, your experience, and your current role today.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I can start with introducing myself, but before I do so, I wanted to thank you for this opportunity to be here and discuss this matter, which is very, very close to heart and a very important one. And before we dive in, I'd like to ask the audience. So if you have any questions, comments, or thoughts, please, raise your hand, because I'm sensing when looking at the audience, we are pretty much all in the same boat here. We are working in an industry that is still in its infancy, so to speak. So hopefully we can, join forces and find solutions to progress the adoption of digital health. So my name is Sam, or everybody calls me Sam. I have a very complex first name, Simundur. Don't even try it. So my background is that I'm a medical doctor. I used to practice internal medicine and cardiology at one of Northern Europe's largest teaching hospitals. Prior to that, I did some basic research. So I'm one of the 2 co-founders of a company called Sidekick Health. Our mission is to transform disease management digitally, and we say that we do that from within. So Sidekick is founded by 2 medical doctors, and we have healthcare executives. We had them joining us early on. Personally, my kind of tipping point was at the hospital I was working at. So I specifically remember this one moment where I had a patient in the outpatient clinic, and I was doing my job, telling the patient. So the patient had suffered a myocardial infarction like 6 weeks before, and I was, sitting there in the traditional healthcare brick and mortar setting, doing my job the way I was taught to do it, and I had 20 minutes or so with a patient, and I was sitting there and telling the patient, if you don't take your medication right, and if you don't, improve your lifestyle, you will increase the likelihood of a new heart attack by X% within Y years. And I'll never forget this, because the patient nodded his head, but after the session, I looked outside the window, and I saw the patient lighting a cigarette. And my first reaction was, as a young medical doctor at the time, I just sunk down in my seat, and I thought, this is hopeless. But then I realized that the patient was much more engaged, with his smartphone, and then it was out with me. And at that moment, I instantly learned that we need to go digital. We now have this unprecedented access to patients through the smartphone 24/7. So to make a long story very short, I found my co-founder at the Harvard School of Public Health. He was doing research on how to engage people with low health literacy and low health numeracy, and how to do so digitally. And here we are today. We are a company of 200 full-time employees. We work with pharmaceutical companies and payers on both sides of the pond, so both in the US and in Europe, and have hopefully some insightful experiences to share, learnings from when it comes to adoption of digital health. So I guess that's it for my introduction.
Great. So first, I would just to echo Sam here. Not about my name. I know my name is difficult to pronounce for non-Swedish people as well. But no, thanks for inviting. And obviously, these buckets, the topics that you introduced in the beginning, it's something that keeps us awake, in the night, especially working in a pharma company. So my name is Malin. That's how it's pronounced. I can take whatever, almost. I'm heading up Novo Nordisk Global Digital Health Partnership Team. So what we are doing basically is that we are striving to establish successful, sustainable partnerships within digital health. So we work with global players, global companies, a lot around connecting our connected devices into the full ecosystem, working very closely with partners like Abbott, Roche, Dexcom, etc. And then we are supporting local and regional players as well, because we know that the global partners obviously doesn't have footprint everywhere. And our ambition is really that we want to secure that the patients that we serve, that is on Novo Nordisk medications, have access to all of the relevant digital tools that exist. So we have a development portal that we invite vendors and other players in the market to go in and actually help them to connect with our connected devices. In addition, we are doing other types of partnerships, obviously, with digital health companies, DTX companies, where we identify more gap in the patient journey. It can be SAMD, it can be non-SAMD, it can be in regulated markets and unregulated markets, etc. So that's also what we are doing. So we are working both on a global scale and supporting local affiliates and regions to achieve what they want to do with digital health. Before I was joining Novo, I've actually been just in Novo for 6 months. I had the pleasure to work in a small, fast-growing digital health company, Health Beacon, for a couple of years. Learned a lot, obviously, from that side and what it takes to actually bring a product to the market from the vendor side. And before that, I was long-term AbbVie pharmaceutical. So I think that has given me some good understanding, I hope, to how to address these barriers, from different angles. Yeah. Thanks.
Super excited to delve into these experiences. So let's start with the first bucket and take it from there. I think we would invite questions as we go through as well. So if anything that's getting said, it resonates, it sparks a new question, a follow-up, different point of view, we'd love to hear it. We'll try and save some time at the end for Q&A as well, but really want to invite those questions as we go through. So let's start with the fundamentals, fundamental digital health literacy for health professionals. I think we've started to see some public institutions take some steps seeking to advance this. So if I think about the UK, for example, the Digital Health Fellowship Program by the NHS is one example of a public institution. But we've also seen pharma getting involved. In the same market, the UK, Boehringer Ingelheim partnering with the NHS and also Orcha in order to establish the Boehringer Ingelheim Digital Health Academy. So curious to hear from you. What are your perspectives on the role of public versus private institutions in advancing digital health literacy? Specifically within your companies, are there any particular initiatives that you've been involved in or would want to be involved in to address this issue area?
Thank you so much. This is a very big topic. Would you like me to start?
Yeah, you can start. Yeah.
Okay,
I have a lot to add, but please go ahead.
Very good. I'll try to keep this under 60 minutes, if it's okay. This is a big topic, and when we think about adoption of digital health and to keep the conversation focused, there are obviously multiple channels that you can use. For this particular topic, you can go via patient organizations, you can go straight to the consumer, you can do every kind of marketing there is basically, but specifically for the healthcare provider track, you are correct. The knowledge within healthcare has been limited when it comes to like the knowledge about, basically the big question, like why to adopt digital therapeutics. But that is rapidly changing. Every year the percentage of, as an example, physicians that are aware of the potential and the now undisputed clinical efficacy that you can gain by adopting and implementing digital support tools and digital therapeutics that understanding has grown a lot, and that is in. If we look at the big picture, healthcare actually is the final frontier when it comes to digitalization. You still have hospitals using fax machines, but what do we see in like retail and banking and other areas? But we are not there yet still. But I can share some examples. The most important part is that. So I had the opportunity at my hospital, because I was interested in digital, I ended up kind of evaluating innovation on behalf of the hospital. So I was kind of sitting at the other end of the table, meeting tech entrepreneurs that were having value propositions like, this is amazing, you have this patient dashboard, the doctor can view all vital signs that the patient has at home 24/7 and get text messages if something goes wrong 24/7, and that was just like no. Nobody wants that, and that also raises a Pandora's box of like who is responsible to react and so forth. So I guess for really scaling digital health within the healthcare system, and now we're focusing on Europe, kind of both sides need to lean in. The tech innovators need to understand workflows at the healthcare provider institutions that they want to engage with. These systems are conservative, and they're supposed to be conservative. They're supposed to, prioritize safety over efficacy and resource management, actually. But with that said, the healthcare providers can also lean in more when it comes to opening up their systems and the EMRs. But to summarize, there are still multiple challenges, but what we have learned at Sidekick is that COVID actually acted kind of as a catalyst or an accelerator in this. We have a number of examples where large hospitals reached out to us, perhaps hospitals where we were doing research, and with simple questions like, can you help us keep our patients with different chronic conditions outside of the hospital? They're basically coming to the hospital to get lifestyle advice or measuring some very basic parameters that you can do at home.
Okay, fantastic. So I suppose if I tried and paraphrase, would it be fair to say that if you've got a valuable enough product, fundamentally, then the momentum is there, the market factors are there, that for your particular product with maybe the HCPs that matter most to you, there's a certain amount of inevitability that those that matter are going to have that fundamental literacy in place. Before we get into HCP engagement, that fundamental literacy is there and building, or is as a particularly maybe as a digital native health tech company, are there any above product initiatives that you would be expecting to get involved in? And then I'd like to pass over to Malin afterwards and compare and contrast from the pharma perspective, perhaps.
My quick answer to this is that, when it comes to the digital health literacy, again, having grown up within the traditional healthcare system, once the data has, accumulated enough, and that's happening very fast, then the awareness and literacy happens by itself. You never go to a medical conference now without somebody presenting a poster or a presentation on the impact of a digital solution. So it's not like, and this is happening very fast. If you would have asked me like 4 years ago, I would be here and saying like, healthcare providers don't know anything about digital, but that has completely changed.
Yeah, so I think that's right. I mean, definitely when we go to congresses now, I mean, digital health is almost on top of the agenda, right? I mean, if you look at the sessions that crowd, most people, it's starting to be around digital health. So that's a really good one. To answer your question a bit, is it about the solution itself, if we manage to create this amazing digital health solutions or digital tech, product, will that change it? And I think I would tend to say no, really. I mean, we have seen and we see a lot of amazing solutions out there, and I've been watching several of these amazing solutions die just because of these two first buckets, right? That we haven't really solved the digital health literacy, and then obviously we haven't solved the HCP engagement. It comes after. So the way that we approach it is, and we can do much more, I think, and we should do more, because otherwise, we will have problems and barriers along the way, right? Even to the last mile of deployment. But trying to integrate digital health messages in the promotional messages that we get, trying to link the outcomes, to the product, and starting to wave that in to also spread the word that these solutions exist. We are also thinking of about channels. Which channels can we use? Using just the in-field team, I'm sure we'll come back to that. It's not really effective, but we have, traditionally as a pharma company, or for our companies as an industry, relied a lot on the power of the in-field team. So I think there is still a lot to do there, and there's this, where we obviously want to join forces as well. I don't think it's something that just, one company can do or two companies can do, together. It's more kind of a movement that we need to see, and it comes, even starting in medical school. What type of education do we give our, medical students? The awareness of how to use data, the sophistication in connecting different data points with each other, algorithms. That is not just looking at an ABHE value and then another value. It's making those connections, and then when we start to do that, I think we will get the level up on digital health literacy.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I agree as well, right? Especially as we start to think about those less mature markets, especially as we start to think about reaching full HCP populations beyond those opinion leaders and external experts. That's somewhere where we're going to really need to still think carefully and work in coalition, right? A rising tide lifts all boats. So I think you started to get into it a little bit, and maybe we can get into that now. So you now need to assume that your physicians are fundamentally familiar with digital health, with the opportunity. They buy that base value proposition. You spoke about it yourself. There's a variety of different channels that you can leverage to reach those health professionals, right? So especially if you're a pharma company, or maybe you're partnered with certain pharma companies, you have the option, the benefit of an in-field sales team. But then there are also a multitude of other channels that you can leverage to get those messages across. So maybe, Marlin, I'll kind of pass it straight back over to you, and maybe you could continue to talk a little bit about the opportunities, the challenges associated with an in-field force, and what other channels you've seen as successful for getting the message out.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, this is the golden question, right? So it's also, probably could talk a long time. I will try to make it short. So I think traditionally, yes, we have relied a lot on the in-field teams, the sales reps, the MSLs, the key account managers, and they are trained to sell products. Right, to sell medicines, and they know the power of coming with a new clinical study that shows superior result, and put that in front of the physician or the nurse in that case. And it's with product, it's basically we don't do any major changes with the product, right? So we put a product into the market, the changes and development has done before that. And then, we can add, new indications, perhaps, but then it's basically the same. It's new studies that comes. But with digital health, it's a different thing. So it's a constantly evolving, and we rarely put a finalized, superior digital health products into the market. It's kind of the way that digital health is, that you constantly learn, you update the solution, you make it even better, with patient feedback, with HCP feedback. So you have to go back and continuously, talk about that. And I think that's where the challenge comes in. First, that it is difficult to get the digital health solution or digital therapeutic high enough up on the agenda for the in-field team to actually prioritize that. So they have, all of this other stuff that they want to talk about, and then, maybe they said, oh, I have 5 minutes left, and have you heard about this, digital companion app that we have? It's really good for your patients if they struggle with, adherence and so forth. And do you want to read more? Here's a leaflet, and here's how the patient gets on board. And I think we all can understand that is not really effective, right? It comes as an add-on, as something separate. It's not connected really to the product. And then another, I mean, it links a bit on the incentives also for the in-field team. So in many cases, they are not incentivized to enroll patients into patient support program or get more patients, on digital health solutions. They are incentivized on other matters. So it is a challenge that we have. So we have definitely starting to look outside of the in-field team. Doesn't take away. I mean, they are still very relevant, but instead of just relying on them, looking at other channels to engage both HCPs, but also patients. So that includes anything from pharmacy channels, social media channels, existing portals, working a lot with our partners as well to do a combined kind of co-promotion effort. So the noise comes from different angles and not just from our company.
Excellent. I can add a little bit to this. And first of all, I agree with everything that you said around the field force. But what we are experiencing in our partnerships at Sidekick, so partnerships with pharma, is that if you do it right, you can unlock amazing synergies. And not only speaking on behalf of Sidekick as a digital health innovator, we have not mastered how to distribute products within healthcare. Who has been doing that for the past 150 years? Pharma has. But you're right. Sometimes the feedback that we get back from the field force, that we are working with is yeah, it's precisely what you said. If you have something that is good enough, basically, and then with good enough, you need to provide like a clear illustration of the value proposition behind the digital component. And then I mean, you know, what is it actually doing? It's not, my mentor at the hospital used to say, when looking at innovation, he used to say, like, in God we trust, all others must bring data. And that was a powerful phrase, because without data, without showing that it actually is helping the patient in any shape or form, be it adherence issues, mental health issues on top of their chronic condition, or even just augmenting the therapy for the chronic condition, that has to be crystal clear if this is going to work. And once you have that in place, then we have seen that the ball can, you know, start rolling. You know, imagine a person within a field force that is armed with this type of data, goes into the healthcare provider, and the healthcare provider will then become very interested and excited. And sometimes, you know, the demand is originally from the healthcare provider that has seen the efficacy at the conference or something like that. Then everybody gets excited. So that's where we can unlock synergies. In this particular distribution bucket, then again, to your point, we have many others.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think that's a good point, and let's also, I mean, it is a fact that we are just in the beginning of the journey, right? So, I mean, the people in the room and the people in this conference, we probably have lived digital health much longer than most people out there. So we are a bit eager, you know, to get this started. But there is, you know, some fundamentals in terms of, you know, the infrastructure around how data is being presented to the HCPs, you know, how they can understand, you know, the value of the data, the sophistication of pharma companies, but also, you know, providers to actually package the data in the best way possible. So that takes time. And I think that's probably what we will see in the next, you know, 3 to 5 years. And, you know, the more data that is available and the more awareness of these solutions, you know, we probably will see an opening in also what the infield team actually can do, you know, to be able to promote these solutions, to get the HCP engagement.
So I'm hearing, don't rule out the infield team, some hills to climb for sure, but don't rule it out. But maybe one follow-up question, and then I'd invite a question from the audience on this topic before we move on. But you mentioned some of the alternative channels, the non-traditional channels, the digital channels that can potentially be leveraged. I heard pharmacy, heard various different channels that could be leveraged. Martin, would you mind just sharing a little bit more about where you've seen some bright sparks? And then I'd also be interested to hear if maybe if you put yourselves in your shoes of when you're not partnered with pharma, like we heard earlier, one of your colleagues saying about the ambitions with Digger in Germany, or, you know, if you were to put yourselves in the shoes of a fellow health tech company that doesn't have that partnership, for whatever reason is maybe looking to commercialize independently, then where would you be looking to start? So Martin, we'll start with you.
Yes, you know, the pharmacy channel, I think, is a really interesting one to explore. And I know that you know, many pharma companies have dedicated, you know, sales forces, you know, visiting pharmacists. So there is some movement definitely in there. And looking at many of, you know, if we're looking at, you know, the patients that exist out there, and especially if it's a chronic disease that these patients suffer from, that it's not unnormal or, you know, rare that he actually is, you know, having other diseases as well and other prescription medications. So, and the pharmacy is often, you know, where they, you know, visit quite often, definitely more than they visit their HCP, right? So that's just a fact. And how can we utilize that touch point much better? There is also a change in the way, at least what we see it, you know, the appetite from the pharmacy chains or also independent pharmacies to provide more value to the patients, and it can be seen as a bit of a differentiator, and they can profile themselves to certain, we even see that profile themselves to certain disease areas, therapeutic areas. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. We're trying also to figure out how we can utilize that channel much more. So if a patient comes in that is on one of our medications, for example, that they can get relevant information either directly at the pharmacy or using digital channels like scanning a QR code, for example, and get directed into a website and have that information handy. Obviously, there is a bit of the same challenge that we face with the clinicians, right? That the pharmacists also have limited time, so we don't want them to spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes with each patient. So it has to be quick, it has to be effective for the patient, it has to be also quite quick as well, because you go into the pharmacy and you don't want to spend much time in that. But that is definitely something that we believe in, something that will grow, and that we are also investing in trying to get our digital solutions out there, using another touch point than the clinicians and the nurses.
No, I agree with that. We see pharmacies playing a much bigger role when it comes to distribution, and it also lies a bit in their nature. We see almost every pharmacy chain now, they want to diversify their business. Many of them are stepping into, to me it's kind of crossing the line in becoming a provider, meaning that they offer booths for diagnosis. You can have your blood pressure measured and get advice and things like that. So I definitely see pharmacies as a good target for distribution. As you rightfully pointed out, there are multiple ways to do this. And let's not forget patient organizations. They are sometimes very strong, depending on the geography, and all the stars align when you approach a patient organization with a digital therapeutic or a digital health tool, and you can, again, it all comes back to the data. If you can, convince them that this is good for the members, usually they roll out the red carpet and start engaging with you immediately, because it's also, this is innovative, it's no risk. It's not like you're promoting a new drug with side effects. We are not facing those challenges when it comes to digital. And being a digital health company, we have much more wiggle room when it comes to experimenting with distribution compared to pharma, because you're more bound with like pharmacovigilance and those things. And again, we strongly believe in the partnership model and have been very happy with that, because when digital health and pharma join forces, usually 1 + 1 makes 3. But it takes time, and it takes collaboration, and it takes, people need to be in the same boat.
Any questions on HCP engagement? Yeah, please.
This is a very good question. The big picture answer is that technology will alleviate tasks from doctors, and in that sense take away some of their work. We see this already with artificial intelligence and radiology. A computer is from what I've seen, better than the human eye in identifying lesions on X-ray pictures, and that's just the way it goes. And I mentioned that pharmacies are crossing the line. You know, they're offering diagnosis, and digital health can certainly help doctors. But I have, to this point in time, I have never encountered a medical doctor that is kind of resistant in adopting digital for this reason. It's always the other way around. You know, we are, as an example, when you prescribe or hand out a digital tool to a patient, it's usually, you know, saving the medical doctor time, be it, you know, in terms of the patient education and lifestyle change support. So, but who knows how it will evolve? If we will see like technology taking over and doctors becoming unemployed, they might, you know, rise up. But I guess we are a few years or decades from that. But then again, technology moves fast.
Just to answer on your question, you said you haven't heard any doctor, you know, being afraid of their job, you know, yet. I have. I have. So, you know, in my different roles, you know, in pharma companies, I have had the pleasure of attending many of these, you know, focus groups, etc. You know, with HCPs. And even if it indeed has changed, I think there is less fear now, than it was before. We still have a bit of a resistance, that might, you know, be, you know, who we are, you know, representing a pharma company and representing, you know, the solution, you know, itself. But there is, you know, some comments around, okay, yeah, but, you know, be very careful that you don't give, you know, too much advice and, you know, to the patient, so the patient rely on, you know, what's in the application or, you know, what's given, you know, in the patient support program. So there is still some kind of worry, I think, out there, but it comes back to access, I think. So if the clinician and the nurse have you know, fully transparent, you know, what is in this, what is the benefit, they have access to the data, we facilitate the HCP and patient you know, communication, and we really step out of, you know, we are not obviously giving any medical advice here. But I see there is still kind of, at least, you know, from my perspective, we can still, you know, see a bit of a, you know, hesitation around that, yes. There was another question in the back. Yeah. So the lack of reimbursement of the HCP's time?
Another very good question. The answer to this one is generally not, because, and this comes back to kind of the basic, yeah, and the fundamental, like, value proposition of digital. It is actually, and this is important, it is supposed to save physician time. If it's viewed as a burden, it will not be successful, or at least that is our experience over the past years. So therefore, kind of a physician asking to be compensated for, you know, saving time, that does not come up very often. But reimbursement is on the rise. DICA reimburses medical doctors for prescribing, so that will only, you know, add to the feasibility of applying digital tools.
If it's okay, we'll take one final question, because I'm seeing people getting really excited to ask loads of questions now, but I want to make sure we at least cover one more bucket. But let's have one more question, and then I promise I'll hold some time at the end for Q&A.
This question is better asked later. So it was a bit along similar lines, because obviously we're talking now about fee-for-service and value-based healthcare pay a fee-for-service basis?
Great question.
I can have a quick comment to this. As I mentioned in the beginning, so we operate on both sides of the Atlantic, and we see that like when working with payers in the US, once you have that data right and can actually show the value, then adoption goes much faster. Then kind of it's more pushed by the organization, which is in the US, they're private organizations. So that acts as a catalyst in our opinion, and is very ripe for digital solutions with the correct data and the quality.
Yeah, I would just say that's the same as we see it. Obviously, if we stay in Europe, that's obviously a bit different what we see in the US. It's easier there to some extent, but also difficult depending on how you see it. But I think there is a different maturity in the markets, even in Europe, that hopefully will rise to almost the same standard. But it comes back to the evidence generation, right? And the more evidence that we can collect, through these different digital solutions, the better it is, because then we can package it and we can present it in a way to the payers around, what does this mean, from a healthcare system point of view, and how can we save time, and how does it impact, the treatment outcomes, etc. I feel even if we have a lot of these solutions, out in the markets, a lot of patients are using it, we still have a bit of a way to go until we have this, consistency in evidence generation. Also understanding what type of evidence is valued higher than others. It depends a bit, which market you go to now. That's our experience. I mean, if you go to Germany, you might get one question. If you go to one answer, and if you go to UK, they might say something else, and then France. So it's sometimes a bit difficult also, because you can do certain studies, in one market and create local evidence, but it's difficult to do that, across, 10 markets. So I think that's still, at least from our perspective, something we want to understand more.
Yeah. And I'd like to add, so before we move on to the next topic, this has been a fantastic dialogue and great to get these insights and these questions. To me, so we have discussed, whether lack of reimbursement for, applying digital or prescribing digital tools is a major barrier for HCPs to adopt. In my mind, until now, the biggest barrier is more simple than that. It is just lack of trust, it's lack of credibility, it's lack of convincing data. So basically, lack of quality. Behind many of the digital solutions that want to be, and get adoption. The new events with like DICA, where they're taking some solutions off the formulary, is in my mind a good thing. If we raise the bar a bit, and we need to do so, and now I'm speaking on behalf of perhaps digital health, we need to raise the bar a bit when it comes to the evidence and the value propositions and how we adapt to workflows. And once we raise the bar a bit, I'm foreseeing that the gates will open and the adoption will, increase very, very fast.
Brilliant. Now, I reckon we've got time for one more bucket, so I'm going to throw it over to the audience. I want to see a show of hands, right? First show of hands will be if you want patient empowerment. We can continue to dig into patient support. How do you help patients to actually get your therapy and then stay supported to optimize outcomes once on it? Second show of hands will be if you want to get into the technical side of things. Okay, so first show of hands for patient empowerment. Second show of hands for technical deployment. What did you see? Pretty 50-50. Patient empowerment?
Patient empowerment, I think.
All right, executive call from the floor here. So I think we started to get into this a little bit as you were starting to talk about some of those alternative channels, right, which can be used to reach the patient as much as they can be used to create a surround sound that helps to inform and influence maybe the health professional, the HCP, the physician. You know, you, Marlin, were mentioning some of the pharmacy examples. We talked about how brick and mortar retail channels, both pharmacy and potentially even in the grocery sector, are starting to experiment with elements of primary care. And as we see the site of care start to shift a little bit, that maybe creates some new opportunities to reach patients with new messages. We've also, you know, talked about the ongoing consumerization of healthcare, which is especially applicable in certain chronic diseases. And I'm a big fan of one of the de novo case studies, actually, the partnership with Doc Morris in Germany, the e-pharmacy chain, where there's a portal co-developed between Novo and Doc Morris for obesity. And through that, you can, as a patient, access a teleclinic consult and actually get prescription for a digger, potentially for a pharmaceutical molecule as well, right? So maybe that's where we can kind of jump off into this discussion, right? Even for companies that are ultimately going B2B, opportunities to maybe take some pages out of the more D2C playbook and better support patients in themselves activating on your digital health solutions. So are there other examples that come to mind? Is there other stuff that you're doing from a support perspective once patients are on your solution to help them obtain optimal outcomes?
Yeah, this is such an interesting topic, right? So I mean, you can do it different ways, but I think what we have also landed in terms of patient empowerment and patient engagement, that is completely different towards a drug. When we look at the medicines, we're a bit obsessed, making sure that the patient takes it on time, according to the treatment schedule, that the patient stays persistent. So we are looking at adherence and persistence, and we're trying to optimize that, right? So that's a completely different thing. And then when it comes to the digital solution that we put into the market, and then we can't really look at it, engagement in the same way that we do with products. So that has been kind of a bit of a struggle also, internally to how do we assess if this is successful or not. And we landed in the fact that, it might be that, these solutions are just relevant for a short period of time. It might just be on the initiation and onboarding, and then the patients, go off, and, it works well, they take the medication, they get the outcome that they need, but then something happens in their life. They might get another child, they might get divorced, they might get a new job, or something that makes them, fall off. And then, potentially these digital solutions can become relevant again. And it might not even be the same digital solutions. And that's also a mindset shift that we have, is that we can't really put all of our, eggs in one basket, right? And think that this is the digital solution for this product, and that will be the, the way that the patient gets extra support. We need to look at different types of engagement, across the patient journey. So, and that's a work in progress, to be honest. We haven't solved it. I don't think anyone has solved it yet. But patient engagement comes and goes, definitely, with digital solutions, and that's normal. And I think that's a learning that we have. So we shouldn't be obsessed about looking at how much they have used it, have they downloaded applications, have they been there, and how often, and have some kind of imaginary goals that we want the patients to go in at least once per week, because it might not be relevant for them to do that.
I heartily agree with this. Agree with this. To us, patient engagement is of course like fundamental. If patients are not using our products, they will not get the benefits out of them. So this is a big topic, and perhaps one final remark. I guess this underlines, and if I were to give some advice to perhaps people in the room that are in the process of creating digital solutions, it is, obsess on the patient journey and be very concise, like where your solution is relevant and where it is not. And to define that really well and take that into account for product development. But that's a bigger topic, I think.
All right, fantastic. So I think we've got time for one or two more questions. I think we'll have to get into the technical side of things another day, another conference. But there was a question over here. Do you want to ask?
How to get the clinicians themselves engaged. Obviously, this is a very important aspect because a patient and a medical doctor, they have like a relationship that goes into both directions. So both need to have some value out of using a digital tool, and this comes back to kind of the fundamental barriers that many are facing by, like, first of all, so you can incentivize physicians, and then you can like place burdens on their shoulders, with digital solutions. So two sides of that coin. Usually, if it's very burdensome, adds bureaucracy to the work, it will not go very far. We have not seen the need for incentivizing, monetary incentives with clinicians, and if it saves them time, if they feel that their patients are happy with the solution and it actually has an impact, that is what has driven the interest from the HCPs that we have worked with. So that's promising in a sense.
All right. I want to let everybody get off to their next session, so I'd say we can maybe continue this discussion down the front.
Absolutely, yes.
But I want to thank everyone for the participation, and please join me and give me a round of applause for Sam and for Marlin. Thank you.